Hello, everyone. Today, I want to talk about 5 principles and guidelines of how to overcome chronic illness and chronic pain. And these guidelines have to do with how to approach practices and therapies so that they're maximally effective at helping you get well. I've been in practice for 22 years. I've seen certain patterns in clients with chronic conditions and certain patterns of either success or failure. And I want to talk about the successes today in terms of principles and guidelines for how to approach practices that help heal you. Because it's not as straightforward as you might want to think and hope for. In other words, there's a lot of nuance in this journey that we take when we have a chronic illness or chronic pain, and we want to heal ourselves and to come back to a place where we feel satisfied with being alive. Because when we have chronic pain and illness, it's really tough to enjoy your life. You have certain capacities are reduced, therefore certain possibilities are cut off from you, and that's very hard on one's psyche. Okay, principle number 1, you must be willing to do a practice, not forced. Let me unravel that for you. So current neuroscience states very clearly that if you are forthrightly facing something and taking it on, no matter what it is, it changes your whole physiology and you become stronger no matter what happens after that. So that's pretty amazing, isn't it? So here's what that translates to. If you decide you're going to work out every day because you want to be healthier, and that could be part of your self-care that would get you better from illness, but you really don't want to, and you hate it, and you gripe, and you whine, and you resist, it'll actually hurt you more than it helps you, no matter what you do after that. However, if you say to yourself, I don't want to do this, but I know it's good for me, and I'm willing, so there's this openness, and you move forward with that attitude, then you will get much more benefit. I mean, you will get a lot of benefit from it because of your attitude and your approach. Now, let me frame this for you in terms of, okay, you want to get better. You have all kinds of self-care practices and therapies that are out there that are offered you or suggested or that you're researching. There's meditation, yoga, talk therapy, somatic experience therapy, blah, blah, blah. They go on and on, right? So what I'm saying to you is that one of the most important ingredients in this journey that you're taking is that no matter which one you choose, that you actually are willing to do it. Because often we say in our head that, oh yeah, I'll do that, but you don't really want to. So be honest with yourself and choose the one that you actually are willing to do, no matter what your judgment says about it, because the one you're willing to do is the one that will help you. Okay, principle number 2, listen to your body's signals. And this may be a little odd for some of you. A lot of people believe that only rational sort of examination of things counts. And I'm going to tell you right now that the modern neuroscience says that's absolutely wrong. And that that rational thought and rational considerations are essential, but they are not the end all, and especially for people with chronic illness and chronic pain. So the way that works is that you need to pay attention to how your body's responding to what you are doing. I would say minute to minute, but especially when it comes to self-care practices and therapies. So if your body is having an extreme reaction to something you're trying to do to make yourself better, or to a practitioner even, you need to pay attention to that, because it could be that it's off base and you're going to want to check it with your rational considerations. But if it's super strong and it's consistent and it doesn't ever go down, like it doesn't kind of resolve, then that's a message that's a no. Your body's saying no, and you need to pay attention to that, because it's really when you negotiate your body's sensations with your rational examination of things and you bring them together to an agreement of some kind, that's really what helps people get better. And it's a big subject, this one, but it's a very important one to touch on, because if you don't have any awareness of your body sensations, or you dismiss them, I can guarantee you're not going to get well, because it's an essential piece. Principle number 3, surf your growing edge. So this concept has a lot to do with the playful aspect of wellness, but also of anything that you're trying to accomplish that is difficult. In other words, you're aiming high and you're saying, I want my life to be better. And in the case of chronic pain and illness, you're saying, I want to be better, right? You want to be able to have a bigger life. You want to have your life back in many cases. And so here's what that means is that you're going to challenge yourself just enough that you grow without harming yourself. But there's a playful aspect to it, just like a surfer on the waves. You're going to wipe out because you went too far. You're going to not try hard enough or put out enough effort, and you're going to fall short. So you have to find the sweet spot in that. And this is true of practices and therapies both. You have to say, have to say to yourself, maybe I'm not pushing myself hard enough, or maybe I'm pushing myself too hard. That's why I'm not, advancing as much as I would hope. And once you find that groove, it's actually called the flow state. And it's when there's just enough challenge in relationship to your ability to make you grow. And it actually feels much different than regular activity. It's this sort of almost weightless, calm, peaceful sort of state. And if you ask surfers or any sort of high performance person, they'll tell you that when they hit that spot, that's when they perform at a level that they're just really proud of. But on the ground with the rest of us, I'm talking about, whether it's your meditation practice, if you're doing Wim Hof method like I do with cold exposure, you don't want to force yourself too much because you're actually going to hurt yourself and set yourself back. At the same time, don't be too careful because then you won't grow either. So surfing the growing edge, a very important aspect of wellness. Principle number 4, make sure your actions are congruent with your core beliefs. This is an extremely important principle. And I almost put it first, and it actually is somewhat aligned with number 1, which is willingness, but it's a little more nuanced. So let's talk about what this looks like. What I see in my practice all the time is people come in who are very ill and they're in pain. And one of the habits they all have, almost all of them in common, is self-abandonment. And what that means in English, because that's a psychological term, is that they put everything as more important than them. Their children, their job, the cleanliness of the house, whatever. It just goes on and on. And they're never important enough to take care of. And therefore, they're sick a lot. And they're also resentful. So this is the other thing, is deep down, they're resentful because they never get what they need. But they're also not standing up for themselves either. So now, what does that have to do with core beliefs? Well, I can guarantee you that I don't think there's very many belief systems in the world that are long-standing that have to do with what's right, that would tell you that that was the right way to live. So it's a mismatch, and it's not helpful. So the remedy to this is taking into consideration these number of elements in one's life. So you have to balance your passions, your talents, your sense of right and wrong, and the desire or the, kind of the feeling that it's best to do things for the greater good of the world. Now that's tricky, right? I mean, that's not an easy thing to do because, one hand you might say, I want to do this because it's going to feel good, whatever that is. But then you may realize, wait a minute, if I snort Coke and drink too much, it's going to hurt my body, it's going to hurt my family, it's going to hurt my productivity. So that would be a bad idea, right? Even though, we all have habits that fall into that category. They're, hedonic pleasures, quick fixes, and even self-abandonment actually counts as a sort of drug because it takes you away from the thing you don't want to face. So what I'm encouraging you to do is to be honest with yourself about how misaligned you really are in your life and take steps to make the alignment better without beating yourself up, by the way. I mean, you just have to be honest about it. And how would that look what would you do? Okay, well, let's say you just take 10 minutes and sit with yourself and say, What's not right about my life? Be honest with yourself, not try to hide from it. And maybe you'd say, oh, my finances are a disaster. Okay, well, keep me up at night. Well, that's a good start. And then just start getting that in order to some degree. Or maybe you're a workaholic because you maybe even believe that hard work is and kind of discipline is an important thing, which I agree. But too much of that may take you away from your family, your friends, and your own health, health habits. So that would be something that you'd want to examine and say, maybe I need to be a little less this way to be congruent again with my core values, which is, you say family's important, but you never spend time with them. That's not congruent, right? So you have to, again, be super honest. And then the other thing that I want to encourage you to do along this journey and this examination is maybe your core values need a little tweaking. Because that's something that I see as well, is that people have old ideas in their head about what's good or what's correct. And you might discover that you're incorrect about some of that and that it needs to be readjusted to some degree. For example, maybe you're someone that's super independent and you want your freedom, quote, but there's a price, right? And maybe one of the reasons you're sick is because you overemphasize that to the degree of dysfunction and need to back off it a little bit. And maybe other people's needs aren't actually a prison, and that being dedicated to someone else or other people or a cause is not a prison. It's actually freeing because it helps you become more of who you deep down believe you should be. The real core of this principle of being aligned with your core values requires a very strong commitment to honesty. You have to be honest with yourself and stop hiding and making excuses. And again, I'm not asking you to shame yourself, but until you get honest with yourself and say, how much am I actually really putting into what I know I should? And if you find that you fall short, which most of us do to some degree, and especially people with chronic illness, make a commitment to being more honest with yourself about how well you're aligned with your core values and work on it on a consistent basis. And I guarantee you that the minute you start really making progress on this, you're going to notice a shift in your health, because the stress level that comes with not being congruent is really bad. And I speak from experience, by the way, because I have recovered from chronic illness as well. I had to clean up some of my behavior and some of my habits on the way, and I still work on it. But I had to really, what do you call it, take an accounting and found that I was coming up short in certain ways. And the final thing I want to share about congruence with one's values is the majority of people that come to me that have chronic pain and illness, they do self-abandon all the time. And here's what I want to recommend there is that usually what that requires to solve that is to start standing up for what you need. And this is with yourself, because you abandon yourself all the time, but it's also with other people. And being more assertive and being more clear with people about boundaries and needs is an essential step. And I mean within your family and at work or in any institution that you're involved in, that if you tend to fall into this category of someone that gives and doesn't get anything, it's really up to you to start standing up for yourself if you want that to change. And it's an absolutely essential piece to your health. And I guarantee you that as soon as you start making progress on standing up for yourself, if you're one of these people, you're going to notice a huge difference in your well-being, your mental state, and your energy levels, and even how your body feels. A lot of pain in chronic pain people I see it gets flared up every time they self-abandon, every time they self-deny, and especially with the feelings of resentment that build up from that. Principle number 5, a healthy body can improve mental health. And the reason for that is because physical and mental wellness are the same thing. Now, you may be wondering how I came up with that, because that may sound different than what you've heard previously. But this is the advancements in neuroscience are explaining to us that there is no difference between mental and physical health. So if your body's sick, so will be your thoughts and mind, meaning they will be off base and they will not be supportive. So if you want a healthy mind, if you want a body that doesn't hurt, if you want energy and expansiveness, you must support your body's health as much as possible. So I'm talking about things like sleep, movement, social interactions, and even purpose in life. All these things are really important for the body to be thriving, and therefore supporting you in your wellness journey. So if your body lacks resilience, that's usually why you're sick in the first place. So that's maybe get that really clear. It's not because you are lazy or, anything else. Usually it's because your body is sick, and therefore your mind can't be aligned properly either. So please attend to your health and make it a priority, because what it does when you do that is it gives you this resilience in your body, which is, by the way, your body is what actually absorbs stress, not your mind. It's your body that processes stress and either decides that it's too much and it makes you overwhelmed, and all those symptoms of pain and dysfunction show up, or that you're strong enough to handle it, and then you have fortitude as a result of facing something. So if you want to face more things effectively in your life, it's really critical that you gain what I call the resource of the body being vibrant. And there's many ways to do this. But physical exercise, like I said, diet, sleep habits, and all those together are really critical for this, and very important that you attend to them if you're truly serious about getting better. Pay attention to the body's wellness, make it a priority, stop eating, Dunkin' Donuts, and then move forward from there. I hope you found these principles helpful. And if you have any questions or comments, please, put them in the comment section and I'll get back to you about that.